Adams put his legal career at risk by defending British redcoats who were charged with massacring 5 Bostonians outside the State House in March 1770, the famous Boston Massacre. Here is this young, politically ambitious lawyer who does an extraordinary thing. He puts his entire career, his entire reputation on the line for the most unpopular of causes, defending the British lobsterbacks who were guilty for gunning down 5 of his Boston neighbors. More surprisingly, he won in the courtroom, which tells you something about Boston juries, at least then. That did not prevent voters from sending him to the Massachusetts legislature, or Adams himself, characteristically, from lamenting that even as he took the oath of office, he was launched on the road to ruin and premature death. In one breath, he acknowledged his, quote, strong desire of distinction, while in the next he verbally flagellated himself for the sin of pride. It is this habitual argument with himself, faithfully preserved in his diaries and correspondence, that makes John Adams the most human and oddly the most endearing of the founders. In his darker moods, he mixed self-pity with self-justification. Mausoleums, statues, monuments will never be erected to me, he lamented after the Revolution. His peppery temperament made him a most undiplomatic diplomat. At the end of the war, Jefferson learned of his friend's appointment to the Peace Commission that was to negotiate a formal end to the conflict. He hates Franklin, said Jefferson. He hates Jay. He hates the French. He hates the English. To whom will he adhere? The answer, of course, was the United States. The only thing Adams loved as much as his family and his farm. Jefferson did not exaggerate when he said of his Yankee contemporary that he was, quote, as disillusioned, or rather as disinterested as the being who made him. Yet while Jefferson became in effect the nation's first political boss, Adams remained a party of one. Therein lies the challenge of understanding this most apolitical of men, whose entire life was spent in the political cockpit. I think it helps if we redefine. Don't think of John Adams as a politician. Think of him as a political scientist. It had been his lot in life, wrote Adams, to discover, quote, that men find ways to persuade themselves to believe any absurdity, to submit to any prostitution, rather than forego their wishes and desires. Their reason becomes at last an eloquent advocate on the side of their passions. And they bring themselves to believe that black is white, that vice is virtue, that folly is wisdom, and eternity a moment. It's a blunt assessment, but not altogether inaccurate. It was Adams' exhaustive study of his fellow men that prompted his belief in an executive, in a president, who would be strong enough, independent enough, and high-minded enough to protect the American experiment from those very traits, envy, greed, and the hunger for recognition that he perceived in himself as well as his fellow man. To Adams, the executive was the fulcrum, establishing a precarious balance between democracy and aristocracy, those dangerously dynamic forces represented in a popularly elected House and a Senate that was chosen by state legislatures. More than a mediator, Adams' executive was a moral balance wheel, above politics, beyond faction, disdaining intrigue, a man of principle, not partisanship. In theory, exactly what we all think we want in a president, and in reality, exactly what that most political of offices cannot sustain. That is the kind of president Adams tried to be. He took office, typically, with little sense of joy. In his words, jealousies and rivalries have been my theme, and checks and balances as their antidotes, till I am ashamed to repeat the words, he told his beloved Abigail, but they never stared me in such horrid forms as at present. Adams' presidency would have more than its share of anxieties, most of them stemming from French aggression and domestic turmoil caused by the prospect of war with America's one-time ally. 10 weeks into office, Adams does something courageous. He appears before Congress to wave the olive branch of negotiation, while simultaneously decrying the actions of France's Directory in plundering hundreds of American vessels and refusing to even recognize an American minister. He asked James Madison, who was, of course, a friend of Thomas Jefferson, as the parties are beginning to evolve. He asks Madison, in an act of national unity, will you go to France and negotiate a settlement as someone who enjoys the confidence of Jefferson and the pro-French party? And Madison turns him down. So he sends a three-member delegation to Paris. They cool their heels for months for a very good reason, or a very bad reason. Namely, the French foreign minister Talleyrand, who was crooked as a dog's hind leg, had, through his agents, he hadn't deigned to talk to the Americans himself, but his agents, who were immortalized in diplomatic code as X, Y, and Z, quite simply, he put a price on peace with France. He put a price on talking to France. He put a price on most things. Talleyrand wanted a $10 million loan from the United States and a personal bribe of $240,000 to line his deep pockets. Then, and only then, would he consent to talk to the Americans. Well, you can imagine Adams' reaction. Shocked as he was, his initial instinct was not to exploit this for political gain. That wouldn't be John Adams. His instinct, in fact, was to treat this as a state secret, to keep it from getting out of control, if you will. But when the opposition, led by Jefferson, his own vice president, shrieked for his head, as well as for the concealed diplomatic record, Adams let them have it in more ways than one. Jefferson, for example, had regarded the president's latest message to Congress as, quote, insane. Publication of the insulting demands, the XYZ demands, did not change Jefferson's mind, but it did transform the mood of the country. As war fever swept the nation, Adams all of a sudden became popular, a rare condition for any Adams, and one that he was immediately distrustful of. A new march, Adams and Liberty, became part of the national soundtrack. The administration's program sailed literally through Congress. John Adams is today regarded as the father of the Navy, for a very good reason. He established the Department of the Navy. At the same time, an army of 10,000 regulars was authorized. He asked George Washington to come out of retirement, to put on his uniform, and to command this phantom army in this ghost war with France. The problem, of course, was, with two you get egg roll. With Washington, you get Hamilton. Washington made it very clear that his acceptance of the president's invitation was conditioned on Washington's ability to choose his subordinates, not the president's. And in fact, this is 150 years before Harry Truman fires Douglas MacArthur to demonstrate civilian superiority over the military. But no one was superior to George Washington. It is not Washington's finest hour. But the fact is, Adams is simply not in a position. He doesn't have the strength. He doesn't have the credibility to tell Washington, I'm president, and I don't want Hamilton, within a country mile of the army. So Hamilton, of course, hungry for military glory, the last thing Hamilton wants is a negotiated settlement with France. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say Hamilton would have been perfectly happy to have a war in which he could, again, burnish his battlefield renown. So, you have the famous quasi-war with France. Adams was determined to keep it from turning into a shooting war.